Welcome to the Elevated Trader Podcast. I am Dr. Kristin Kidgel.
And I am Tracy Ball. Join us every week as we journey into becoming better traders.
We believe becoming better traders involves elevating our skill, our mindset, and our health. In each episode, we will discuss the current book we are exploring, and we invite you to join us on this journey.
Are you ready to elevate your trading, mindset, and health to the next level? Let's do this. All right, so welcome to the next book in the Elevated Trader series, Elevated Trader podcast series, and that is The Capital Without Borders that we are doing. This is going to be part one of this book. Now, we are doing the audiobook in this, right, Kristin?
Yep.
That's correct.
Yep.
How are you liking it so far? You know, it's one of those things where I've learned something because I really didn't know what a wealth manager was. Did you?
Yes. I happen to
did?
know a few. Yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. That's because you live on the East Coast in Miami. There's probably lots and lots of them over there.
I've met some, and one of my friends from high school is one.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
There you go.
And he's done very well for himself.
That's good.
But he also walked into a situation, which we will talk about in a minute, where I believe it was his mother was one.
Okay.
And so he kind of went from probably college into it. And so she's retired and he's taken it over.
Mm-hmm.
But he is I guess you would call it a franchise. He's affiliated with a very large, there's probably 3 massive national, international names, like Merrill Lynch and things like that, like the big names that have all these like satellite locations and private ownership. And he's affiliated with one of those.
Well, there you go. Well, I had never heard of a wealth manager. Didn't know what they were. Not in my wealth category at this point, maybe at some point. So I thought it was interesting. And for those of our listeners that don't know what a wealth manager is, basically they're financial architects. They kind of have a background in law, accounting. They're a jack of all trades, right? So part advisor, part financial advisor. Not only that, but I'd almost say that they have to have social skills or social worker skills, because they also have to deal with the dynamics of families, et cetera. And why don't you tell us what the point of a wealth manager is? Like, what do they do?
Well, we almost have to go back in history, because if I remember correctly, this is decades back. I mean, this goes back over a century. And I believe it was England, which was probably multiple, like, I think, I don't know all the countries that were involved. If it was like a United Kingdom thing, but it was really about where obviously a lot of the original wealth probably started. But how families or groups of people, typically like-minded individuals of like an upper class, not even like upper middle, right? These were like the upper class, big time. We're trying to create, not just grow their money, but also like a tax haven, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in history, when it started, it probably started more, I hate to use the word innocent, because that's what the stigma they carry and have always carried, is like they're up to something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, because they are, but usually the people that are mad about it are the people that aren't getting the same treatment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I kind of stay neutral with it. Like, there's going to be bad people in all things, right? So the idea is to protect the wealth, and grow it. And in protecting that, it's probably like, that's why a lawyer probably would be good at this, because they have to know the laws around taxes.
Mm-hmm.
So, or tax, not evasion, that's the wrong word, but like avoidance, like where can we move some of this money and what can we do with it? to save giving it away, so to speak. So basically, it's just protecting what you have.
Yeah, that's the proper word, protecting. And really, because what I understand is it started out as a way of protecting real estate and moving real estate from family, like from your parents to the kids and then down generations, generationally, and helping prevent the kids from having to pay tax on a property that's already been purchased, which completely makes sense. I get that. Totally get it. And it's kind of morphed into something that's more global, that's designed to really protect the entire dynasty of your wealth
And legacy.
Yeah, absolutely. So these people, not only did they have to know the accounting and law and be advisors, but they have to do that globally. So they need to know the laws in different countries and states and what have you. Is same with the tax ramifications in different countries and what have you. And their network has to be huge. That's what I'm seeing a lot in this. Is really, it comes down to having a tremendous amount of network that you can use at your disposal to really make you function well as a wealth manager. That was one of the things that I picked up from it so far. Were there any highlights that caught your attention right off the bat?
Well, you're just making me think of that term. Your network can equal your net worth.
Yeah.
Because these guys, they're making some dough depending on the level of clientele. Faux show.
And actually, one of the things that really stood out to me was, now that you mentioned that, is we've talked about, who you hang around with, and you may not be ultra wealthy as a financial manager or as a wealth manager. You might not be super wealthy, but just by being in proximity to the elite, the ultra wealthy, you're going to learn some tips and tricks and things on how to better yourself financially, which is really cool. So it's hard not to become successful as a wealth manager if you're hanging around people that are already successful. So I just wanted to tap onto what you just said.
Yeah. And I think it's, this is really the term that's constantly in my head, which is slightly negative, but it doesn't have to be negative because, where did we learn it? But the Good Old Boys Club is originally how I think it started. Is it like that today? Likely not. There's a lot more females creating, trust funds and, fund managers, so to speak, in their own female companies, or they're a female at one point, and likely still is a male dominated field. Matter of fact, I really found interesting, you were asking me what one of the highlights that stood out in the beginning was when she was trying to write this book and question people, she was getting a lot of doors shut in front of her. And then one of the people that actually would talk to her was down in the BVI, the British Virgin Islands, right? Where that's supposed to be like a tax haven, so to speak, down there. And a lot of wealthy people do live there. And this one guy's basically like almost not verbally abused her, but he was not nice to her. And everybody knows you're in town here talking to me, and they've seen the articles that you've written, and they think you're up to something. And just because she's this woman who's asking questions. And then she's like, you know what? I think I'm going to have to get a degree in this and go to school for people to take me seriously. But she did, which was pretty cool.
I think that's really, talk about taking your research right to the next level. She did. She went to school. She became a wealth manager. And yeah, that's pretty kudos to her. It took her years to get enough data and enough information to even write the book. And by the way, her name is Brooke Harrington. So that's the author of the book. Now,
I do find that it's picking up the more I listen to it. I honestly, for the record, feel strongly that it's the person they picked to read the book. The male voice is very monotone. And, we just came off of Jen Sincero's You're a Badass, who when Jen reads it to us, it's hilarious. It's dramatic. It's just really, really good. And then we went from her to this guy. And so honestly, I think if I was reading it, I'm not quite sure why we decided to do the audio, but I struggle with his voice more than anything. It's not really the material.
You have to find a different version because my is female. So
What?
yeah. Yeah.
Well, there are different versions of the book.
Huh. Yeah.
I
Well,
believe
there you go.
I believe there might be. That's interesting.
Huh.
Okay, we'll
We'll
figure
have to
that out
double
between
check
this
that.
episode and the next episode, everybody.
Oh, that's awesome. So what are some of the things that you can take away so far from the first, few hours of reading this or listening to this book and apply to your own life?
Oh,
Are there any?
Apply to my own life. I wasn't
Mhm.
waiting for that little statement at the end because I already had something in mind I wanted to say. How about I start with one of my first takeaways, and then
Okay.
two, how I would apply something to my life.
Okay.
My first takeaway is all the things that I have learned and thought about money managers is actually being confirmed.
Mm.
It was all hearsay before. It was all speculation. It was all, it was all the things, maybe just in the environment I grew up in and all those things. But it's kind of like, yep, knew that. That's obvious. Interesting. The history was the most interesting part.
Mhm.
And it wasn't a surprise to me that she was struggling talking to these people trying to get information. What could I apply to my life? What I need to apply to my life is, as the wealth builds, where are the tax havens? Just some, because, you and I discussed this before we hit the record button, that the annoyances can be that they're not paying the taxes, blah, blah, blah. Well, no, they're paying taxes, people. They're paying a lot of taxes. They're paying probably what we would probably spend in 10 years in taxes. They're probably doing it in a year. The ultra wealthy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But would you blame them to maybe save some? I don't know. It's hard. Without judgment.
I actually like your argument there, and after we had this discussion off the mic, I was thinking about some of the things that our tax dollars go to and how frustrated I get with the misappropriation of funds from our government. So as somebody that has the power or the ability to prevent or limit the number of tax dollars that goes into the hands of the government, for instance, I think that would be actually a good thing to have if you have the skill set to really apply that elsewhere. And a lot of the ultra wealthy do a lot of entrepreneurial, philanthropic ventures that they donate tons of money. They invest in projects. They create value in other ways versus offering tax dollars and giving it to a government that misspends it, right? And so I completely understand that and I can appreciate that. And I can't remember who it was I heard speaking about this at one point, saying pretty much the same thing. It's been over the last year where we've been listening to, particularly in the United States, the government talking about taxing the wealthy, and taxing the wealthy on investment income and things like that. There's been a lot of back and forth. It hasn't been happening up here, but I've been hearing it happening down in the US. So I've heard a lot of those conversations going on during the political debates and what have you. And I can't remember what wealthy individual came on the mic and said that same thing, that they would like to be able to direct where the money that they're issuing for taxes, the multi-millions of dollars that they're putting into the tax bracket, where it would go. And I get that. I understand that. And for that reason, so completely, it was a good argument.
Yeah. I mean, just a couple days ago, I watched a clip of a representative that had the mic and talking about how another one of his, is it a coworker, another representative for another state or something like that, was the complete opposite view of like, but we haven't voted to go to war.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to go to war, let's vote on it.
Mm-hmm.
But we're spending money as if we are at war.
Mm-hmm.
And you keep saying we're at war, and he's like, I don't remember us voting. And that's exactly the same thing. It's like billions of dollars, but it hasn't been voted on, and that's why we put these people in power to vote. So we're really off topic here because now we've moved into a political realm, but
the point is still the
Yes.
same, though. I mean, that's the reason I think that supports having wealth managers, and it takes a lot of effort, a lot of creativity, a lot of time, a lot of dedication to build wealth, and to let that wealth just disappear because we don't want to deal with either learning how to manage the taxes or learn how to manage it effectively so that we can make it work better and be more productive, whatever it might be. There's a need for it. So the part that I guess get frustrated with is that the wealth managers, the creativity and the capabilities of the wealth managers that we're discussing right now, and the abilities for them to tax shelter, isn't necessarily available to everybody. You need to have a certain level of wealth in order to get access to this skill set, or you have to learn how to do it yourself. So that's the frustrating part. So even if I wanted to shelter my taxes or shelter my money a little bit better, I would have to learn how to do most of that myself, because the average individual doesn't have, or the average accountant or the average the tax person, I don't think they have the skill set in place to maximize the benefits that you could possibly get. It'll be average, but I don't think it'll be to the level of what some of these wealth managers have. Would you think that's the same?
And I also I hope that this book changes that thought, because we haven't finished the whole book, right? But I believe there are ways, but it is getting the knowledge.
That's it.
Which is what you're talking about. But I also think that the knowledge isn't as hard as we think, because that's how funds and fund managers, where let's think about it, right? There's a fund for people that just are wanting to protect the environment. There's a fund for that you can put your money into. So I think you don't have to be the extreme wealthy to put your money in safe places. But then that ends up being, well, what do I believe in? You know, there's funds just for Christian groups, you know, so these things exist. And I think, and I hope that this book kind of feeds us into that.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great point. You don't know what you don't know until you don't know it, right? And somebody points that out. And this book is bringing that to light. That's the biggest thing that I'm getting out of it is, wow, if I really want to make a difference and make my money work for me a little bit more, there's ways I need to just spend the time to do it. I need to learn how to do some of these things so that I can shelter some of that money and, you know, put it to use where I'd like to put it to use, because I am very giving and generous, and there's things that I want to accomplish and goals that I want to attain. And it would be nice to have that extra cash to be able to do that. Have it allocated in areas.
There's so many things when you look at the details of it, like what got voted in.
I know.
We have some interesting voting in stuff, and in the lottery, where the lottery goes, you know, that money goes into the school system, they say, you know, it's all those things. So watching where every penny goes.
I've been paying EI which is employment insurance, for, gosh, the better half of my life. And because I've been self-employed, I can't collect it. So, you know, just little things like that. It's like, I'm paying into this fund and I will never collect it. You know, there's a lot of our social systems that I will never use, but my tax dollars go to that. And I understand that. I get it. That's part of being in a social system type of environment. But as I said, it would be nice to be able to allocate my hard-earned money to more things that I think I have more of an interest in, right?
Yep. So this brings the point of, like, just sometimes ignorance is bliss.
There you go.
Just sometimes.
So if you don't want to step into the enlightened, then don't read this or don't listen to the audiobook on this, because you can continue to remain in that ignorance is bliss form.
Well, it could be, or it could be detrimental. This is a perfect book where, like, it'll show you where you're going to want to have that ignorance, and it's going to show you where you're going to want to find out, where do I put my funds, my wealth, my trusts, all those things. Okay.
Absolutely. So we're kind of into the third hour of the reading, and at this point they're talking about how you can become a fund manager or a wealth manager. And really it comes down to a couple things, because when you're dealing with the ultra wealthy, they are by nature very distrustful, according to this book. And I understand that too, because when you start to get money, everybody in the woodwork comes out and they always want something from you. And it's really hard to trust them. And I mean, we see the stories in the tabloids all the time about, people stealing or mismanaging the trusts of, children, for instance, the child actors and what have you, that, they make all this money and then they find out later on that they're broke, or, you've got some other actor that's making tons of money and then they find out that their accountant has stolen all the money. I get why they're distrustful. I completely understand it. There's
if you've watched Schitt's Creek, the first show talks about that. Okay. So that's a huge, I think it's Netflix. Anyways.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Is it Netflix?
Yeah, I think so.
I couldn't get into it, but the very first episode is somebody mismanages his money and they lose everything.
There you go. So
and we're in 2022, where this is the big thing. You're just and all they have left is a little town.
Oh,
that's
there
funny.
You go. Well, I totally get it. So because the ultra wealthy are distrustful by nature, it really takes a lot to get into their circles. And the wealth manager, they become a kind of confidant. From what I understand, wealth managers, they work for you for life. And if not for you, they'll work for your entire family, generational after generation after generation. And it just keeps getting handed down to, through the families type of thing. So you have to have a few characteristics. First of all, you have to be able to mingle with the elite, which means your mannerisms, your language, your capabilities, things like that have to be up at that level. And so usually it comes from people that come from elite families. They become wealth managers, or from elite schools. They end up becoming wealth managers. And that's generally how people get into this field. Or they go through the accidental route where, you end up with somebody that manages to play polo, and through your connections in polo, because that's an elite sport, you end up meeting people that end up leading you down the road of that wealth management path type of thing. So it's quite an interesting book. I'm interested to see what the next 6 hours bring. So yeah, guess you guys will have to stick around and listen to the next part to find out what else we're getting from the book. All right.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Thank you for joining us today. For more information about the show, as well as our list of current reads, check us out at www.theelevatedtrader.com.
Remember to subscribe and share if you found value in today's episode. See you next week.